Today I'm revisiting everyone's favorite colony management simulator, Rimworld, to try out the new Biotech DLC. This expansion adds inheritable xenotypes, vampires, fur people, pregnancy, children, and my personal favorite, robots. There's a lot of stuff you can do now, but today I'm going to be trying out the Mechanitor start, a solo colonist scenario that pits you, a reclusive machinist, against the elements in an effort to rebuild your race of robot people and assume the throne of a mech hive underneath your command. Your only starting companions are your two humble servant drones, and your sole starting possessions no more than a scrap heap of metal and a few packed survival meals. Thanks to the new xenotype editor, I got to design my colonist, giving him blue skin, pimpin' green highlights, and at the steep cost of making him miserably inept at plant cutting and animal whispering, I imbued his genes with the ability to work all day and all night, never to sleep at all. His one trait, iron-willed, making him practically a robot himself, albeit with blood coursing through his veins. Day 1. So we arrived in a boreal forest from outer space on the first day via drop pods, a heap of metal potential. Our landing zone was naturally defensible with only one narrow entrance to the north, and the dirt on the surface was fertile and rich for planting. I decided to set up right where we planted. I didn't want to waste any time, so I immediately started delegating whatever work I could to the two drones at my disposal. One of them was built for hauling supplies, and the other for building constructions on our soon-to-be base. So I relieved myself of the burdens of hauling and building, reserving human time for higher-order tasks, while the bots worked on the menial labor. I think the goal and strategy are immediately apparent. I was going to need to build more bots, which in turn would keep producing yet even more bots, ultimately freeing up our protagonist for the most high-minded, intellectually demanding tasks. But until then, we were just going to have to get our hands dirty and labor alongside them. So on the first day, I designated a planting zone in the most fertile soil, and got to chopping wood. I wanted to build our base into the cliffside, so I set out a stockpile zone nearby, drone recharging stations, a wind turbine, and wires to power it all, along with a mech gestator, the incubator in which we would begin fabricating new mechs. I spent most of the day watching our bots haul back and forth as our protagonist slowly struggled to hew logs from the trees. We worked sleeplessly, straight through the night, and by the morning of day 2, we completed the wind turbine and powered the gestator to start building mechs. The first was the Agrahand, a planting bot. Its gestation period was around 3 days. On day 4, as the bot was incubating, we prepared the way by clearing all the fertile field squares for planting. Then I embarked on the gargantuan task of mining out the mountain, one square at a time. But our protagonist was feeble and slow and scratching away at the rock. Better work for a bot, but we still needed more stone and steel. Still stuck in menial labor. So as a solution to this dilemma, if we researched, we might be able to build more advanced, specialized bots for mining, though that required a signal chip, which could only be acquired by calling and dispatching a fearsome diabolus threat. One great mechanoid accompanied by 3 guards. So that was our new goal, prepare a small mechanized military of our own in order to unlock the research for the next drones. So on day 5, I started gathering more resources to compound our strength. I sent the hauler and the constructor to bring back more stone and metal from the region and into our compound. There we were beginning to create a small military of robots. The process was slow, but it snowballed, and by day 13 we had 4 millibots following our protagonist as guards to a precious commodity. We summoned the diabolus threat from the skies. Hours later, it drop-podded in with guards of its own, spitting fire on all sides from its hellsphere can. Sure, there was friendly fire. I mean, there was a lot of friendly fire. But bots could be rejuvenated to full working condition in short order. And at the end of the combat, the diabolus dropped a treasure, a signal chip, a mechanoid artifact containing the untold secrets of constructing more advanced bots capable of manifold tasks. Tunnelers to mine, scythers to fight, snipers to pick people off, along with a plethora of other menial tasks of labor, freeing up more of our time and resources. Thus we carried out our plans, repairing downed bots, all the while raising the number of bots in my bandwidth, just as our protagonist's passion led the research toward day 34, when we broke through to new mech tech. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty disorganized, so I just decided to put everything everywhere, until I had actually dug out a base under the mountain. The large bot gestation tube. We used brain scans to generate a more advanced, standard subcore, the beating heart of the embryonic sac that would come to be our tunneler mech. An absolute workhorse of a bot that can carve through sheer granite like sand. In the meantime, we constructed band nodes, which are basically like cell phone towers. These raised our bandwidth and let us control even more bots. Then a psychic ship crashed nearby. An easy mission for our bots and the machinist. Though there were some casualties, the truth is that even if the bots broke down, I could always just repair them. Feeble, fleshy human raiders too were no match. Although the repairs did drain my bots of energy, generating more pollution and entropy nearby at our toxic waste dumping site. This began to spread, and for all our defenses, after 10 days the tunneler's gestation came to its exciting conclusion with the birth of one of the most capable, efficient miner bots, which coincidentally looks a lot like Mr. Krabs. I mean, just look at that. And now our protagonist could research in peace. All the while, the tunneler plowed straight through the mountain to lay out a grand design for our mechanical compound, a palace of circuitry and metal. Then we sprang forth a scyther, a terror, sharp hand-to-hand combatant, a pikeman, a dead-eye sniper from far, and a scorcher, hell incarnate, to patrol the compound and beat off raids before they had any chance of getting near us, scorching the snow and saturating it with the blood of our foes. So we hibernated through the winter, as the tortoise seeks the shelter of its burrow during the solstice, building our labyrinth of machines and compounding our growth with new bots that built even more new bots, that themselves built even more new bots. So we weathered the winter, freezing the toxic waste packs and rendering them innocuous to halt the spread of pollution. And when spring thawed out the cold, our compound molted its former shoddy defenses and emerged with a sharp, gaping maw ready to devour raiders. This is around the time we called the next series of diabolus threats to get more signal chips and keep raising bandwidth. But now we had a bona fide defense. My robots are better than yours, especially when we have an unfair advantage. But in a fluke, the diabolus drew the first blood from our protagonist, a discomforting reminder that at the center of our metallic fortress was a heart beating with sanguine red blood. Automation, production, strategy. The delicate organ that was keeping my colony humming was, in the end, a feeble but irreplaceable brain, and it was made of cells that could die. So I took the machinist off the front lines and unleashed my whole toolset, specialized to neutralize any threat on any side. An infestation in the halls? The Scorcher was as if tailor-made to stand behind the Scyther, showering the mega spiders in a cleansing baptism of fire. Our protagonist led from behind, escaping with only minor burns. More bots? No matter. Our tunneler had extracted so much plasteel and uranium from the Underdark that we could sustain dual autocannons and uranium slugger turrets indefinitely. We chased the mechs beneath the mountain in an ancient danger, who fell straight into our trap. Even the feeble humans trapped in the pods there weren't worth taking back into our indentured custody. They simply couldn't parse through tasks anywhere near the speed of a fleet of robots, all fine-tuned and geared for glorious efficiency. So by the time we were ready to summon a queen, we had automated practically every facet of our livelihood and defense. All that remained was to watch the conflagration and fireworks. When you hit a certain point, the power rule starts to kick in, and it's more like watching your colony than actually running it. The queen was surprisingly much easier than the repeated diabolus raids. It turned out that we were over-prepared, and she dropped the penultimate mechanoid artifact, a power-focused chip, which we brought back into our RGB lab to study and fabricate fabricors, literally robots who fabricate things. After that, we waited an ungodly 6 and 12 gestation cycles to complete centipede gunners, centipede burners, and our very own diabolus. Nonetheless, it was exciting that everything was now passive, to think it all began with just a single man. To be sure, it all still depended on him. I crafted yet still more implants to increase bandwidth and control. At times, after all, the mechs were starting to wander off, since they required so much sheer voltage to operate, and we struggled to wring out every last bit of possible energy we could harness from that plot of land. It all culminated in the ultimate defense, and led to one final encounter toward Ultra Mech Tech, the Apocryton Raid. Yes, the Apocryton Raid. It sounds scary, but it's just a guy who teleports around and shoots toxic. Not that bad since we had fully committed to only one human, but he explodes at the end, so that was very cash money of him. My own diabolus did well, probably more damage to my defenses than the enemies did. But in the end, I gotta say that it's pretty metal to have a swarm of immortal, self-resurrecting robots at your beck and call. After that, as a victory lap, we could make our own legionnaires and queens, which honestly took literally forever. I don't really know where this ends, but as a disclosure, thanks to Ludion for the key. They actually reached out to me this time. I mean, I would have bought it anyway, so the joke's on them. As always, thanks to my patrons who are currently stashing away a lot of natural plant supplements under their mattresses. I'm Ambiguous Amphibian. Until next time, my friends.